Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Train Aid podcast. My name is Nick, and in today's video, we are joined by Neil from the Education and Training Foundation. And today we're looking at a very interesting topic, which is the use of AI within teaching. So this is an introduction to AI in teaching. So before we get started, Neil, thank you for joining us today. I just wondered if you could just introduce yourself before we get started into the podcast.
Hi, thank you, Nick, and welcome everyone. My name is Neil Matthews. I am an area relationship development lead working on the T-level development program for the Education and Training Foundation. My background, I have a master's in interactive storytelling, and my kind of work background, I was a teacher, manager, and a quality manager within the further education sector for over a decade, and really came to the fore during the kind of pandemic, which meant that I really kind of honed in my focus on ed tech and the digital response to the needs of a changing classroom due to the pandemic. And since then, it's peaked my interest into the developments in AI, how it's used in a professional sense, as a kind of an assistant, but also where it's going in terms of how it's going to be used in classrooms going forward as well. So thank you for having me, Nick, and giving me the chance to talk through the subject.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for joining. So in terms of the agenda for today's podcast, we've got 10 key points that we're looking at. So we're looking at the very beginning with regards to AI, so the introduction to AI within the classrooms. We're going to look at the advantages to AI, the limitations, the concerns, the worries by teachers, and the different functions that AI can have in regards to lesson planning, admin tasks. How can it be more vibrant within teaching? So there are 10 key points that we are going to be looking at, and we're going to be discussing each one one by one. And we are just going to, as mentioned, we're going to look at different viewpoints on each as well. So we will, of course, put the podcast into a blog so you can read up on every point that we are going to be discussing. So let's just get started with the first key question. So number one is, how do you see AI transforming traditional teaching methods today? So I think in my head, sort of there's a bit of a line in the sand now, and I think we have to embrace AI. It's not going away. So I think it's time for teachers to kind of, start talking about AI. This is the future. We have to embrace it. But I think in terms of a starting point today, how do you see AI transforming the traditional and core teaching methods that we see today in today's classrooms?
Yeah, you're right. We're in a weird position with it, because I think in terms of traditional teaching methods and what the results that we want from our learners, and when you start adding in things like, encouraging that curiosity, building in critical thinking skills and the ability to review and synthesize and then apply those outputs that they've got, all of those traditional core concepts of education are critical to using AI. We've all been in the situation where we've put something into an AI program, and it's chucked out something that is just completely abstract or just not what you've asked it to do. So it is that those skills, the questioning skills, curiosity, critical thinking. I've heard people say, well, we don't need to practice English skills anymore. Well, you still need to use all of those skills that we learn all the way back to when you're when you're reading text and you're looking for meaning and all of the kind of key skills that we look at. All of those are so critical to using AI, and that broadens and that broader awareness of the world that we try to instill in our students. That's all part of this, because AI is still new. It's still a frontier that we're not quite sure what it looks like. So
Yep.
the students still need that critical thinking around using it and where it's going. And that's when we talk about traditional teaching, I don't think that's ever going to change. That's always going to be part of it. The big thing that I do believe that it will change is our assessment methodology. So obviously coming from an FE background, a lot of it is coursework based. I know with the T levels and a lot of the kind of new extended diplomas are adding in that aspect of kind of external assessment, whether that's an exam or the employer set project within a T level. But when we still have that component of internal assessment, whether that's kind of a project based, a report, portfolio, whatever it may be, rather than sticking our head in the sand and just saying, actually, we will just be, 100% exam based, because that's not right for every single learner. Actually, we need to view our assessment methodologies to incorporate the use of AI, and what that looks like, and some kind of institutions across the country are almost like using AI logs, so the students actually almost like a reference list submitting their AI logs as well. So it could be cross-referenced to see what they've pulled out, how they've used it. But that all goes back to showing the learners how to use it, fostering that curiosity. And then we need to change our assessment methodology to make sure that we're enhancing that and using it as a tool that it actually is.
Absolutely. I think that's key. And I think the key word there is assessment. So
Yes.
I have seen that, with exams, they can now be marked using AI. So it's making teaching in somewhat easier for the teacher, not having to grade papers. It can be done with the use of AI. So I think that is a particular aspect which can be explored, kind of making assessments easier to mark and to review. I think that's a great starting point. I think in terms of the next step is, what are some real world examples of AI successfully being used in the classroom? So sort of nationwide, have there been sort of any success stories that you've seen within this sort of early elements of AI? Have there been sort of any sort of things that have caught your eye where AI is actually being a force for good in education and training?
Yeah, there are colleagues and institutions around the country that you kind of see cropping up, and kind of really highlighting the positive impact that it can do. And if anyone hasn't read it yet, there's a lovely kind of document called Hello Future, which is all about embracing AI in further education. So if you are in the FE sector, please do hunt that down. And again, Nick, I'll send you a copy. So if anyone does
Please
say
do.
I can't find it, please kind of send it across and send them the link. But this is from sector colleagues across the country, and they break it down into three key sections. So section one is leadership. So it's all about what colleges are doing across the country to look at AI's role in enhancing teaching and learning, and what that strategic leadership and vision needs to be. The second one is transformation. So how do you implement that strategy? How do you scale it? How do you make sure that you have the technical infrastructure to kind of roll it out? And the last one, and probably the one that underpins everything, is governance. And the DfE have recently published a policy template, and they're running practical modules for understanding AI and the safe use of it, and using it to support kind of leaders to embed it as well. So there's lots going out there. I will put a kind of big shout out to someone who I've been on panels with, and he's the head of teaching, learning and digital at Basingstoke College, and that's Scott Hayden. So we've been on kind of panels that we've spoken about, and I know he's kind of a champion of really bringing it live, and it's not just AI, it's all digital tools, and kind of trying to update our teaching infrastructure to really kind of bring that to the fore. So that's a kind of wide ranging view, and there are lots happening. So if it is happening in a college or a college that you have links to, please do reach out and talk. And I always say, um, offer someone a coffee and sit down and have that tactical latte to pick
Mm,
their brain and kind of really see what other people are doing. In terms of the kind of going a bit wider, the Khan Academy, which is obviously an international kind of um, additional tutoring program, but actually they were one of the first to really kind of hone in on this personal tutor aspect. And I'm going to kind of come back to this over and over again. So it's called Khan Migo, and each learner has their own personal tutor. And obviously it uses them as the model, so that it learns them. It's sickeningly positive sometimes, but it actually builds that relationship for them, and it gives the learner that instant hit. So if they're curious, they don't have to wait until their next session. They can hit that curiosity button straight away. If they've hit an impasse that they can't work out how to kind of get around of it, they've got the solution. So rather than if you're in a classroom of 30 and you're on your own and you're trying to make sure everyone has that time, they've got that ability to do it. And when we talk about what does this look like going forward, I do think that kind of personalized tutor, AI tutor attached to every learner is going to be the kind of the first big milestone that we're going to hit with it.
I think that's excellent, a fantastic key point, because being in the classroom myself, when you have 20 or even 30 learners, you have such little time to spend with each of them that you are, rushing around trying to give, positive feedback, check in with everyone. So the use of AI and a personal tutor assigned to each learner, I think that can be extremely developmental, in terms of providing that support. I think that's really, really key. Fantastic, no problem. So I think the next question really is really how do you explain the role of AI to teachers, to trainers who might be sort of a bit sort of skeptical or overwhelmed with this kind of concept? Obviously, with you see on the news nowadays that obviously the use of AI could be used for things like fraud. It can be quite scary, and there's a lot of kind of sort of negative aspects of AI. But how can we sort of provide reassurance, guidance to teachers who are sort of looking to dip their toe into the world of AI and teaching?
So a lot I mean, it goes into two strands. So when you look at the kind of negative press of where it could go, we're talking about the ethics of it and the governance of it, which is why that's so important for the government and leaders and sector leaders and other sectors to actually start discussing this, looking into the future, because we know it's here, we know it's not going to go away, so that our students, the next generations, are ready to deal with it. But we have that responsibility to pass it off in a positive position. So we need that governance, we need those safeguarding barriers in place, and that is key for making sure that we start from a position of strength to go forward. For the teacher in the classroom, what I would say is that AI is a tool. I remember being in a classroom where I didn't have the fancy smart board, and I got really thrown out because I got used to using it. And when I didn't have it, it had become a tool. And if you've been in teaching long enough, not every classroom had a computer in it. And we book out computer suites and laptop trolleys, and it's just become part of our kind of day-to-day
Mm,
requirement. It is that tool. So see it as such, that it's there to augment
mm,
and enhance. It's not there to replace. And the I've always believed that the human connection of teaching is what underpins everything. Every learner that came into my classroom, that human connection. And James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without significant relationships, and the relationship to the teacher, the relationship to the content, to focus, to drive. We won't lose that with AI. Like all that it should allow us to do is to actually have that time to build on those relationships, and to strengthen going forward. And pedagogy remains central to what teachers do. That won't change. It's just we've got another tool in the box that we can pull out, that we can use. And that kind of, I know that the kind of next question we're going to look at are the resources as well. And just if you can just keep that idea of a toolbox for the moment, and then when we go to question 4, we can kind of unpick what's in the toolbox.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at that. So in terms of those sort of practical resources, and things that we can offer now to teachers, those practical teaching tools, as you mentioned, the toolbox. What are your thoughts on the use of resources such as ChatGPT and any types of packages out there, any that you can think of, any AI packages, anything that you've used previously?
Yeah, obviously ChatGPT is the kind of known one. It was the one that kind of burst onto the scene, and people often kind of talk about. And when you have that, and you then have companies developing these packages, these suites of resources for colleges, schools, or kind of education providers. They all kind of are based off of much the same one. And this goes back to the toolbox. They are your sandbox. They are your toolbox to play with. Obviously, with the package ones and Teachmates, it is a very slick. It's a very well put together program, and what it does is it gives you here's a list of things that you might want to do. And as a teacher, it's still under your purview to say, actually, if I'm doing this in class today, this is the formative assessment that I want the learners to engage with. This is the content I want them to engage with. ChatGPT is a bit more free flow, that you are the prompt engineer. It's not packaged as much. It's a bit more open, and it does require a bit more practice to achieve those consistent results. But all of them, and whether you're kind of looking at Copilot or any of the other programs, so Magic School, it's all much the same. And when you dig into it, a lot of it is running the same program behind. They are tools. Yes, they speed up your workflow. They're really good at avoiding that kind of blank page. So we've all been there when it's like, oh, I've been given this extra lesson. What am I going to do? Like that is the fear of the blank page. It can really spark your kind of creativity, your curiosity to say, okay, this is my topic. What do I want them to do? Or if you've hit that kind of classic teacher's block where you don't know how to get it over the next step, it all gives you those kind of tools. But again, it all boils down to that teaching expertise, that you need to critically review what is going out. Always check. Don't just print, put your prompt in, print, it goes out, and then learners are almost picking out American spellings, or the information's wrong, and it's just kind of pulled it from somewhere that you're not quite sure. So always critically review. And again, your expertise, your sequencing of those activities, that is where you come in. That you're not ever going to replace that knowledge that you're bringing in, that your knowledge of the learners, to say that actually this learner's going to respond really well to this learner. I know that they need to go a different way. They need to be scaffolded in a different way to get that. So it gives you that opportunity to really speed up that process. So they are fantastic tools. What I will say is to just make sure that the safeguarding around data is in place with that, and package programs like Teachmate do give you that barrier around there of what your data's going in and bits like that. So just that's a real big positive for it.
I think admittedly I've used ChatGTP when creating my PowerPoints for my courses. So when I've got a bit of a block, I just
Yeah.
put the question into ChatGTP, and it comes up with a list of bullet points, and they're kind of like a list of ideas. Like, wow, I didn't think of that. I'm going to use that. And for my learners on my courses, I say, yeah, please do use ChatGTP. But I always have to remind them, don't copy and paste, almost kind of look at it and then kind of close it down and then just write what you saw in your own words. And I try
Yeah.
to say, yep, these are fantastic points, but also some of the points might be relevant to, say, different countries. Like they might not be relevant to obviously here in the UK, but it might be kind of some of those points are used within America, for example, but they're not really relevant here. So I say just double check the key points that you're adding, so to speak, and like you say about the language as well. But I think it's a great tool for kind of if you've got that mental block, you're not sure how to maybe pad out your answers, ideas, have a, put the question in and see the results, because some of those results, those key findings are a kind of a different perspective, and I think it's incredibly useful.
Yeah, I was at a conference last year, and a doctor of computer science was going for another doctorate, and he was on the stage on the panel, and he said, I'm gonna admit something that's going to split the room." And he says, "I'm starting my paper from the blank page, and I've asked AI to start it for me," because he was like, "I just can't put pen to paper. I just don't know what to put."
Mm.
And he was right. It was literally, you could see either people going, "Yeah, like awesome," and other people were just horrified. Like, how can you? And that's a good kind of analogy of where I think the sector is, and also where the world is in regard. People go either going, "Yeah, let's really play with this," or other people are like, "No, like what is going on?" And you're right, the ability to spark discussion, ideas, you know remove blocks for whatever that may be, is absolutely fundamental for where this can go. And if teachers are using it, professionals are using it, by the time our learners hit the workforce, it will be embedded into it as well. So actually, we need to be showing them how to use it correctly, positively,
Mm.
ethically, just to make sure that, yeah, we're leaving them in a better place for them to kick on going forward.
Absolutely. I think hats off to that gentleman, because it's being very honest, and it's almost reducing the time. So you could spend like a couple of evenings, with having that block, and having the opportunity to use that AI system can help sort of speed things up, which I
Yeah.
guess is kind of just onto my next point. So, in what ways can AI reduce admin tasks and free up time for teachers to focus on learners? So, I think that's kind of the one thing with teaching and the reputation that it's very admin heavy. There's more sort of focus on admin, writing lesson plans, kind of less time, with your learners, who are kind of the main point of teaching. Um, do you have any suggestions on how sort of AI can be used to reduce admin tasks for teachers and trainers?
Yeah, I'd any what I would class as routine tasks, really look to lessen the load and automate where possible. So, start of term spreadsheets that we print out, put on the wall in the office type, updating records, transcribing team meetings. It just frees up the mental cognitive load for staff, that you're not going into, you've just taught all day and then you've got an hour staff meeting. Oh, and it's my lucky turn to take notes this week. You're not actually paying, you're not present in that meeting because you're too busy trying to capture the notes. So, automate it, summarizing lengthy documents, education is run on policy, and some of the policy documents are weighty tomes. Specifications from awarding bodies can run into the hundreds of pages. So you can summarize that. You can delve into it. You can pull out those key bits. And there are, and I'll talk about it a bit later. There are AI programs that cite and reference within the documents that you provide as well. So if you are looking for that kind of interrogation of weightier tomes, you've got that, and it will draw you to the exact page. Obviously, we talk about generating lesson materials. I was always, of the belief that a good lesson can still be planned on a post-it note. You don't need reams and reams of paper to sequence your lesson, that it's there, but it's the rest of the materials that go with that to provide that, and to draw them up, and if you're flipping learning or extending it from the classroom, making sure that all of those materials are done and then differentiated, because you can really start to delve in, and as I think as AI progresses, and as the kind of safeguarding of the data progresses, and we really get a handle on that for individual institutions, I think we'll move more and more towards the kind of real deep learning, and use it to predict where it's going to, where learners can go, but it all requires on the information, on the data. So if you've ever been in a college at the start of the year and you're doing predicted grades, and SLT are saying, what's your predicted grade profile? We've paid for this program. Now, the program doesn't take the individual into account. The program only takes what they've come in with. Whereas once we kind of sort out the kind of safeguarding of data, and the personal tutor aspect, whether that's a chatbot, actually those predictions could become clearer and clearer, and it will react and update based off of what the learner is, who the learner is, what they're doing that time, and build into it. And it can really take it down to actually tracking where that learner is, really helping them maximize their potential and that success. And that obviously varies depending on each individual learner, and that will be where we're going to go. And rather than the kind of science of, well, the computer program, after you've entered in their GCSE grades, has predicted them a merit on their extended diploma, and the staff's going, well, actually, a merit's really good, but I know they're struggling because X has happened outside, or they've had a falling out with such and such. So actually, I can see their work dipping, or they've just turned 18 and they've discovered going out, and they've passed their driving test, so they're driving around the country, or they've got this planned. All of that local knowledge that a teacher holds could eventually be lessened, and then we can really feed that in, so that grade prediction will start kind of going up, down based off of what's going. Knowing the learner kind of comes in, so it will lessen the load for that going forward.
I think that's an excellent key point. And I remember, as a former college teacher myself, having almost weekly meetings, and you're absolutely right. You're given the baton of writing down the minutes of the meeting, and after a long teaching day of 5 lessons, you're struggling, and so you're not fully present within the meeting. And by the use of AI, writing the meeting notes, the minutes, is just a way to stay present. And you might have an idea that you can share with your department, but if you're sort of busy writing, then that idea might sort of be forgotten, it's bypassed. So I like how you're more present. And obviously, with the use of AI, with the minutes of meeting being recorded, that can be saved, stored, and for any inspection, then you've got your meetings there, it's present. I think that's a wonderful idea. I guess my next question is regards to kind of the lesson planning and content creation. Again, speaking from experience, so many Sundays have been sacrificed, when I was back in a college teacher with lesson planning and just like content creation. And I'm just wondering, are there any current like AI tools which can kind of help with lesson planning and sort of any type of content creation, to kind of buzz up teaching and to kind of reduce this sort of planning aspect which you might have to do in your own time?
Yeah, and obviously we've mentioned kind of like AI packages that
Yep.
colleges and schools and education facilities are kind of doing, and that's their kind of job. The one that I will say that kind of sits outside of that, and the one that I'm using to great effect at the moment is Google Notebook.
Mm.
So Google Notebook allows you to build your own model that it draws from. So I'm finding it really, really useful for using specifications, case studies, and you essentially build the database that it interrogates. The better the database you build, the better the output is. And it cites where it's from. So if you do need to kind of reference a line within a specification, whether it's like a key performance outcome or a grading criteria, it will tell you the exact page that it's found on. So that kind of gives you that oversight as well. But because of all of that, and it's really good for building exam papers, like mock exam papers. You can put the specification in, ask it to target specific areas, put any case studies that you want to put in, any articles that you're referencing, transcripts from podcasts. It can analyze YouTube video clips. It just opens up all of that. So it's essentially like a research assistant that it then pulls it all together for you. And then really kind of what you get out of it is a lot richer. Obviously, it's only as good as the information you provide, and that's the key point. But it does mean that you can build differentiated guides. You can focus in on specific criteria, which again, if you're then looking at the kind of lifespan of a academic year, you know that your students kind of go up and down, and some of them grasp it better than others. Some of them might really resonate with certain aspects or certain topics. You can start using that to really adapt almost on the basis, because you've still got your database, you don't have to ever go back to scratch. And the last thing is, and it's why I've started using Google Notebook, is that it does not use any of your personal data.
Yeah,
It's
very key.
just ring things. So it's very key. It mind maps topics for you. So again, if we're going back to that, actually some of the content and topics that we deal with as educators, when you factor in all of the stakeholders that surround education, actually it can start mind mapping that. It can start giving you a nice clear workflow to kind of build from. So if anyone, yeah, and it's free. Sorry, I've also forgot to
No?
mention that it is free
Yeah.
to use. Yeah, Google Notebook, it's a build your own kind of language model, and you can really get some interesting responses from it based off of what you've got, and it cites it. So if quality, on the quality side of it, if you're asking where is this information, how have you got to this, actually this is the exact line in the specification, this is the paragraph it relates to, this is the criteria it relates to. It's linked it to this case study because it's drawn the links between the case study that I've provided, or the past exam paper, or the exemplar material that the awarding body give you, past content from students, from yourself, work, YouTube. You can draw all of that, and actually from that criteria, it's found these resources. It's then generated that from that. It's a very, very useful tool to kind of have in your back pocket, really.
Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to trial it and to learn more about the system. I think you mentioned about a key point about things like personal data that worry. What are the biggest ethical concerns around using AI within teaching? It sort of goes back to teachers who willing and ready, to dip their toe within the use of AI in teaching, but there's almost that kind of worry about like a kind of ethical concerns, or if they use AI, are they going to get into trouble by the awarding body? You know, they might be worried about plagiarism, referencing properly. Is there any sort of advice or anything that we can do for sort of reassurance, or any sort of ethical concerns we need to be aware of at all? Anything that's on your mind with this element?
Yeah, the data privacy is at the top.
Of course.
How we are protecting our data of our staff, how we're protecting our data of our students, more importantly, where is that data stored? How is it going to be used? That is being looked at, and you know, a lot of the kind of programs that we have access to, so your Google Classrooms, your Microsoft, within that they are ring fencing the AI assistance within that. So that is the kind of first step. Does it need to be more robust for like packaged AI programs that we might buy? Yes, and that clarity, and I do feel that the kind of the governance side of it needs to really hone in on that, and make sure that it is safe. That's the, you know, our data is safe. Bias is the other one. So, you know, we've all heard the tales of AI going, you know, off the cliff and suddenly turning into this monster that is
Yeah.
responding to us, and you know, returning information that is incorrect, false, or just, you know, scandalous to the point where it can influence. So that's all about the data that it's trained on, which is why Google Notebook, because you supply the data and it's ring fenced to that data, I feel is a tool that's really, that can be used in a classroom with learners as well. So, but to really underpin that, you know, the importance of critical thinking, the review from a teacher, the review from the students, that critical lens. So everything that is, and I said it right at the start, you know, the key concepts of what good education is doesn't go away because we're suddenly using a program. You know, the learners still need to have that. They still need to look at and have that value system that, you know, we instill in our young people. That still needs to be, you know, they still need to question it, and they still
Yeah.
need to think about, you know, is this right? That's the kind of one. So that bias is there. That's a bigger
Yeah.
societal question to deal with as well. Sustainability comes in as well when we start talking about effort, like it, and when we talk about making sure that your infrastructure is in place, what that looks like. It does draw a lot of energy. It does use a lot of energy. So what does that look like going forward? How we're going to be using it? Equity, in terms of access. Again, you know, people say that COVID really highlighted that equity, disparity between, you know, students and households. The more we lean on technology, the more that will potentially widen. So that needs to be addressed, and what that looks like, I don't know. I don't know if that sits centrally within a government function. Does it sit within the education sector? Does it sit within local authority? I don't know, and that is that's going to be a question that I think will come down the line, probably not in the first kind of leap that we have, but potentially the second, because people will go put their hands on and say, hang on, this is brilliant, but my students don't have access to this at home. What's that going to look like? And that's probably the wrong way round of doing it, but that seems to be the kind of path we're on. And then the kind of last one is that over reliance. Like, will we become lazy? Will we become lazy educators? Will that breed lazy students? So again, it's about using it as a tool, critically reviewing it, using it as an extension rather than the only, you know, tool in the box. And that's the, you know, you often see that AI should support, not replace,
Mm.
is the kind of the main drive there.
I think that's a very, very good point. I think that that's one I've sort of forgotten about is accessibility. If we are if we're saying that AI is the future, absolutely, but can everyone afford it nationwide?
Yeah.
So some schools, colleges, establishments, they certainly can. Others perhaps don't have the funding. They just don't have access, which is a big concern. So it could almost create like very much a seesaw in terms of who can't afford it,
Um,
and some students could get, but even teachers could get left behind or not be able to access that. It's a
and
very good
also
point.
geographically, in terms of, you need a solid internet connection. That
Absolutely,
we still haven't cracked that in some of our communities around the country, where internet still isn't as reliable as you would need to consistently access it. So it's it's a it's a big question, and like I said, I don't think it will be addressed until we've had that first breakthrough, because I don't think it's on enough people's, like, at the forefront of their thinking at the moment.
of course, and for things like homework as well, it's the use of AI and homework. If we haven't got that solid internet connection,
Yeah.
some households don't. So we're asking learners to do something that they don't have access to. So that's something, as you mentioned, that needs to be addressed by the top down, really. The next question is, what kind of training do teachers need to effectively use AI tools in the classroom? Any sort of advice there, really, on what they can do to to improve their knowledge?
So yeah, so I think the first step is about demystifying. Um, and again, it's opening up the doors, being curious ourselves. Um, Teachers are often guilty of not practicing what they preach.
Mm,
So we need to demystify a lot of it. So that basic understanding, that basic literacy, um, and how it works, and what goes on in the background. You don't need to learn advanced coding. You don't need to advance, like, learn deep machine learning kind of practices. You just need to demystify that initial fear. Once you get over that, it's about that tool specific training. So a lot of colleges, schools, will introduce platforms. They'll roll out training for staff.
mm,
I would say that training needs to be more than just a whistle stop tour of features. That any you do need to practice it. Like every skill, it needs to be practiced and honed before going live. So don't introduce it mid-year and then expect it to be rolled out, because staff have got other bits on their plate that
of
they're
course.
kind of juggling. And then have a meaningful and informed plan about what that looks like when you're integrating it into your pedagogical approaches. um, you know Technology should amplify, not
Yep.
add bureaucracy. And a big fear that I have is that, um, if we remove a lot of the kind of
Mm.
routine admin, because we've sped it up and we've automated it, will that just mean people go, well, teachers can do more other stuff? Well, the sector, the colleagues in the sector are pretty put upon as it is.
Yep.
Again, that cognitive load. We're recording this at the start of term, so hopefully everyone is fresh faced and eager to start teaching. But come the dog days in kind of April, May, and then even worse in kind of June, July, like,
Yeah.
teachers are at that kind of mental overload where it's just, we can't give them any more to process. So if we remove bits, it's not a case of that's now space to add
Mm.
extra stuff for them to do. Actually, let them breathe. Let them let their ability to be teachers grow. Let it replenish that way. Um, and what I would say is, if you are looking at it again, it model that curiosity. We want learners to be curious, so
Mm.
we need to be curious first. and that's, there are lots of free training from very reputable companies. So Google,
Mm.
Microsoft all offer kind of free training modules to
Yep.
work through. Look at them, just go through, sign up to podcasts, sign up to
Mm.
YouTube videos. Be critical of
Mm.
what you're listening to. Test it, try it, put it in your toolbox if it works, if it's safe to use. If not, it's you put it in the back burner, and it's there for a later date if you need it. But that's the kind of starting point if you were looking at kind of training and what you wanted to do.
I think that's excellent. And I think, we're sort of in set days within colleges, schools, sixth forms. It can't just be a whistle stop tour where you just have like an AI introduction and everyone, signs a register. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're all present
Yeah.
and that's it. It has to almost kind of have like a 5-year plan and a regular training. So, you're going to have like sort of set days where we, explore AI, the certain technology, and almost kind of check in with staff and almost have like a kind of like an ILP or kind of like an appraisal. How are you getting on? Like
Yeah.
kind of more one to one. So there's more of a buy-in. It's not just an introduction and away you go. So it needs like some coaching and mentorship really for it to remain.
And obviously, like we know that if that's from from a company that's providing the package, we know that would potentially come at cost,
Of course.
because it is an ongoing. So, do you move to a kind of train the trainer model where you kind of champions, but then, are they the right people to be in that role? Does their kind of workload allow them to really kind of lean into that? And then how do you sustain that over, 5, 10 years? Because we all see, this is the next biggest thing in education, and we're ripping up the playbook, and actually the playbook that you've brought in is pretty similar to the old one with some keyword changes. What does that look like? If you are a leader, if you are in charge of that, what does that look like going forward? And you're right, it's not just signing a form to say I have been in attendance
Mm.
for a session where someone showed me that if I click this button, it will do this.
Mm.
It really needs to be, that discussion about how we integrating that into our pedagogical approaches. What does that look like as an institution? What is our stand on this? And then kind of going forward with that.
Excellent. I guess my next question is do you ever think that AI could eventually replace certain teaching roles, or do you think, well, it will always be a tool to assist educators? So I think for any potential teacher or trainer looking to, to go into teaching full time, and they might think to themselves, you know what, what's the point, because we're just going to be replaced anyway. Do you think that will ever be the case where we are replaced by sort of those kind of virtual mentors, and that's it? Or do you think it'll just be AI will just be a tool and nothing more than that? It won't have like an AI permanent teacher, so to speak. Do you think we'll ever get into that position at all?
No, I think it will be a tool, um,
Okay.
to assist, enhance. Um, Again, going back, when were electronic calculators introduced? Did we ever feel that would be replacing maths teachers?
Mm.
When computers were introduced to classrooms, has that replaced any of the skills that we need to actually use them effectively? Um, I think it will go down the role of enhancing. That's the where I see it going. Um, will it mean that enhancement? I don't know what that will mean for the sector. Like I can, I can see it really boiling down into making teaching more accessible to the learners,
Mm.
which is a positive thing.
Of
And
course, yeah.
and if we can remove all of the barriers that we spoke about previously, in some weird education utopia, actually making learning accessible at an individual level would be the kind of pinnacle. But I come back, you still need that critical review. You still need that human connection. You still need that champion, of a learner.
Mm,
People don't get into teaching because they hate, children. They get in because they see the value that they have. They see the connections and the positivity that they can bring down the line. That's the investment we're putting in now,
mm.
so that when they leave, they are productive members of society, that they do some good, and that could be the smallest piece of good, that could be the greatest good, but we're preparing them, and that's the kind of the contract you sign when you become a teacher, that you're handing over your knowledge, your humanity, your personality, your knowledge, your skills to that next generation to
Yeah.
do better than what we've done. And I don't think AI will ever be able to replace that.
I think that's absolutely key. I mean, with like supporting learners, I think the way that they ask questions to you, only you can kind of understand that as an individual.
Yeah.
I don't see how AI can do that. So you've got, a learner, you can see by their body language, that the way that they kind of look at you, the way that they phrase a question, you as a human can understand and support them. So I don't think, AI will, replace teaching roles. It'll be used as a tool. And I think as you mentioned, there is that solid need for teachers to have that kind of one-to-one rapport with learners. I guess with an eye to the future, then the final question is, if we say for 10 years from now, what will a classroom look like? A fully integrated AI classroom. What could that look like, and what type of, I guess, activities could we see? Have you had any sort of thoughts on that? 10 years from now, what could it look like?
Yeah, I in this instance, I veer from what could be quite practical to full-blown science fiction.
Okay.
So that's the kind of spectrum that we're dealing on. In terms of full practical, I think an introduction of a personal tutor for
Yep.
for like that instant on the spot that goes, whether that's modeled on the teacher,
Mm,
or the students kind of create their own version of what they need that personal tutor to be. And when I almost explain it to people, if listeners are old enough to remember, in Word, where you had the little paper clip,
I
that you would
remember.
ask, yeah, um, um, that is essentially, but for it to be keyed into you, and respond to you and be engaged with you, I think is probably where we're heading. One of the exciting things that I can see, AI really going into down the line is using historical sources to unlock the ability to interact with figures from the past. And again, that critical thinking, that almost using machine learning for us, what can we learn from those people? So, there's a lot of kind of good work about using, diaries
Mm,
from the past, and using that to interrogate and kind of ask questions, and very similar to what Notebook would do with a specification, but using, historical sources to really kind of bring that to life. To we often say that, grandparents, and we're losing that generation that went through so much, and we could actually have a chance to talk to those people now, and interact with them. So I think that will come along the line. There are a lot of places kind of doing that as a kind of mechanic at the moment. So
of
I
course.
can see that fully kind of coming online. And then the last one, I think that you could link and integrate classrooms a lot more. So if it was fully digitalized, fully integrated, how good would it be to run projects, whether it's like entrepreneurship, or collaborative pieces with classrooms, different parts of the country, different parts of the world,
Yep.
that you can then interact with. The idea that you could be having a conversation with someone who speaks a different language, and because of AI, it gives you that instant kind of translation. If you've ever been on holiday and had to use Google Translate to read a menu, can you imagine that in real time, and having the chance to speak to someone from another country, or engage with industry from another country, global leaders that might necessarily not speak English, that you can engage with, or being able to access government debates, policy. What does that look like? How do we engage with it? Those are the kind of three key bits that I think that connectivity, whether nationally, regionally, nationally, internationally, accessing, using sources to access kind of the past, and then the AI personal tutor kind of going forward would be my top three of realistic terms. If we were going full-blown science fiction, full-blown haptic suits, goggles, that's down the line, but one day maybe.
I think that's an excellent key point. I remember, back in the day when I was a student, we would have a partner college in France, and you'd have to write a letter. So I think, how good would that be that, it's kind of taking a step forward. You're actually, you're on a video call with someone within, say, that school, but the use of AI, enabled to communicate with them and have that
not just communicating, actually collaborating, working together.
Yeah.
And when we ask, learners when they go to the workplace to be, team members, actually being a team member means being able to collaborate with people, different people from you. You might have to collaborate with someone difficult, or who you might not necessarily get along with, but actually we're professionals, and that's our job, and we need to practice those skills. So how can we enhance the opportunity to practice breaking down those barriers? And if a fully integrated classroom would, you could have a partner school in France, you could have one in Germany, you could have one in Japan. You've got the opportunity to really kind of break that down, come up with those projects like that, and that then strengthens global ties, that strengthens our ability to work together, unity, and it just unlocks a lot of positivity and valuable skills for students for when they become adults and workers and all of that.
I think that's fantastic, and hopefully we get there in the next 10 years, that we can adopt all of those key points you mentioned there. I think that's everything in terms of the agenda, Neil. That's been a fantastic podcast. I mean, thank you so much. Are there any sort of other questions? Anything else you would like to get off your chest? Anything to add? It's been a wonderful experience having you here. Anything that you would like to mention? Any other sort of questions or key points?
No, it's just I'll reference Ted Lasso, who references Walt Whitman, and it goes back to be curious, not judgmental. And it's that curiosity, like we expect, we know children have it. We almost kind of train it out of them, because we don't have the time to answer all of their curious kind of whims and bits like that, because we have a lot more children in the classroom. So we expect children to be curious, so we need to be as curious. We need to model that curiosity, and that means taking brave steps sometimes. And like I said, you know, if the tool doesn't work, you put it to the back of the box, and you know, use the ones that you can, and your teaching skills won't disappear if you know, if you use a different tool for that. Your skills, your knowledge is not going away. It's there. It's you. That's what you know, any colleagues that are in the sector, any colleagues that are thinking of getting into teaching, you are the number one tool.
Of course.
So, you know, value yourself, think about that, have that curiosity to hone your skills going forward.
Wonderful. I think that's a fantastic key point and reference to finish. Just want to say thank you so much for today, all of your time. As I mentioned, we will write a blog on this. But thank you so much once again. Hope to see you in the
Thank you,
future.
Nick.
Thanks so
Yes,
much, Neil.
see you soon. Bye now.